Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. Before we dive into today's story, we just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you all for watching. We truly appreciate your support. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, it's totally free, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest stories. Now, with all that said, let's jump straight into the story.
The Tennessee air hung thick and heavy, a blanket woven with humidity and the scent of honeysuckle and something far more sinister, the lingering dread that clung to the Bell farm like Spanish moss. John Bell, a respectable man by all accounts, felt it crawling on his skin every time he stepped outside. It started subtly. Whispers scratching at the walls, the sound of chains dragging across the rough-hewn floorboards in the dead of night. At first, John dismissed it as the wind or the creaks of an aging house settling. But the noises grew bolder, more malevolent. Then came the physical attacks. Pinches, slaps, hair-pulling, directed exclusively at Betsy Bell, his teenage daughter. Betsy, a bright, quick-witted girl, became the target of the Bell Witch's wrath. The entity, unseen but undeniably present, tormented her relentlessly. Her laughter turned brittle, her eyes haunted with a fear that mirrored the dense woods surrounding their farm. John, a man of faith and logic, tried everything. He prayed, he reasoned, he even consulted the local doctor, who could find nothing physically wrong with Betsy. But the attacks continued, growing in intensity. The whispers evolved into taunts, mimicking John's voice, mocking his faith and threatening his family. "John Bell," the disembodied voice would raspy, "you think you can protect them? I'll tear you all apart." The community, at first skeptical, slowly began to believe. Visitors flocked to the Bell farm, drawn by morbid curiosity and the whispers of a vengeful spirit. Some claimed to feel the presence, a chilling touch on the back of their neck, a cold spot in the air. Others scoffed, calling it hysteria and superstition. One such visitor was Andrew Jackson, then a general who, hearing of the haunting, decided to investigate. He arrived with a troop of soldiers ready to debunk the rumors. But even he couldn't deny the strange occurrences. His men were knocked down, their horses spooked, and Jackson himself reportedly received a sharp slap to the face, delivered by an unseen hand. He famously declared, "I'd rather fight the whole British army than face the Bell Witch." The witch's actions grew increasingly bizarre. It would sing hymns in a booming baritone, recite Bible verses, and then, in the next breath, launch into vulgar tirades and threats. It even seemed to possess the ability to travel, reaching out to people miles away. John Bell, once a man of strength and conviction, began to crumble under the relentless pressure. The constant fear, the sleepless nights, the helplessness he felt as he watched his daughter suffer. It eroded his spirit. He tried to find a reason for the haunting. Was it a former land dispute? A forgotten grave? A curse placed upon his family? He searched for answers in old records and local folklore, desperate to appease the entity and bring peace back to his home. One evening, exhausted and despairing, John collapsed, his body racked with pain. The doctor diagnosed it as a strange, unexplained illness. As he lay dying, the Bell Witch's laughter filled the room, a triumphant, chilling sound that sent shivers down the spines of those present. "I told you, John," the voice cackled, "I will have my revenge." After John's death, the witch seemed to subside, its activity waning. Betsy eventually married and left the farm. The haunting continued, albeit sporadically, for years afterward, a chilling reminder of the violent spirit that had terrorized the Bell family. The Bell farm, once a symbol of prosperity and family, became a place whispered about in hushed tones. Locals avoided it, preferring to take the long way around rather than risk encountering the malevolent presence that still lingered, a testament to the power of the Bell Witch and the enduring mystery of the unseen world. The story, passed down through generations, served as a stark warning. Some evils are best left undisturbed, for their hunger for chaos knows no bounds. The air still hung heavy over the land, a constant reminder of the terror that had once reigned supreme, a terror that some claimed, even to this day, had never truly left. Time for the next story. Guys, if you liked that last story, please don't forget to leave a like. Thank you. The desert wind howled a mournful song, a sound Llrona knew too well. It mirrored the ache in her own heart, a constant, gnawing pain that clung to her like the dust devils that danced across the Rio Grande. Tonight, the river was a silver ribbon under the full moon, deceptively serene. But Llrona knew serenity was a lie, a fragile illusion shattered long ago. They said she was Llrona, the weeping woman. They said her wails echoed along the riverbanks, a chilling lament for the children she drowned. They said she haunted the waters, forever searching, forever grieving. Llrona knew the stories. She grew up with them, terrified and fascinated in equal measure. But Llrona was not a ghost. She was flesh and blood, a woman drowning in the echoes of her own tragedy. She'd loved Mateo with a fierce, all-consuming passion. He was a charmer, a dreamer, a man who painted the world in vibrant hues of possibility. He'd promised her forever, promised her a family. And they had, for a brief, glorious time. Two beautiful children, Sofia and Miguel, their laughter the sweetest music Llrona had ever heard. Then Mateo left. Ambition, he said, called him to the city, to a life Llrona couldn't offer. He promised to send for them, promises that withered and died like desert flowers under the scorching sun. Llrona was heartbroken, yes, but she was also stubborn. She worked tirelessly, scrubbing floors, sewing clothes, doing anything to provide for her children. She would show Mateo, show the world that she didn't need him. One sweltering summer day, overcome with exhaustion and a desperate hope for a few hours of respite, Llrona took Sofia and Miguel to the river. The cool water beckoned, promising relief from the relentless heat. That afternoon was a blur, a kaleidoscope of sunshine, laughter, and carelessness. Llrona, lost in her own worries and the fleeting joy of her children's play, wasn't paying attention. A sudden surge of water, a hidden current, a panicked shriek. Sofia was swept away. Miguel, desperately trying to reach his sister, was pulled under as well. Llrona dove in, but the river was a monster, its currents strong and unforgiving. She grasped at them, her fingers brushing their small, slick hands, but they were gone. They never found their bodies. After that, the village whispered. They pointed, their eyes filled with suspicion and fear. They called her La Llorona, the madwoman who killed her own children. The guilt, the horror, the bone-deep sorrow consumed her. She became a shadow of her former self, wandering the riverbanks, calling out their names. Tonight, she stood at the edge of the water, the desert wind whipping her hair around her face. She wasn't searching for her children's bodies. She was searching for a way to forgive herself. Sofia. Miguel, she cried, her voice raw with grief. Forgive me. Please forgive me. The only answer was the mournful howl of the wind and the cold, indifferent rush of the river. Suddenly, she felt a presence behind her. A chill ran down her spine. Turning slowly, she saw a figure shimmering in the moonlight, almost translucent. It was a woman draped in a tattered white gown, her face hidden by long dark hair. Llrona gasped, her heart pounding. Was this La Llorona, the legend, come to life? Or was it just a figment of her grief-stricken mind? The figure raised her head slowly. Llrona saw a face etched with unspeakable sorrow, eyes filled with an ancient, unbearable pain. But as she looked closer, she saw something else. A flicker of understanding, a glimmer of compassion. The figure spoke, her voice a whisper carried on the wind. They are not lost, she breathed. They are at peace. You must find peace too. Llrona stared, mesmerized. Who was this woman? Was she a ghost, a hallucination, or something else entirely? The figure reached out a spectral hand, her fingers barely touching Llrona's cheek. Let go of the guilt, she whispered. It will only drown you. Remember the love, the laughter, the joy. That is what will keep them alive. And then, as quickly as she appeared, she was gone, dissolving into the shadows and the whispering wind. Llrona stood there, trembling, the woman's words echoing in her ears. She didn't know if she had truly seen La Llorona, or if it was just a product of her broken heart. But something had shifted within her. A tiny seed of hope, planted in the barren landscape of her grief. She still felt the pain, the overwhelming sorrow. But now there was also a glimmer of understanding, a fragile acceptance. Maybe, just maybe, one day she could find peace. She walked away from the river, leaving behind the wails of the weeping woman, and carrying within her the faintest whisper of a prayer, for forgiveness, for peace, and for the hope that one day she would be reunited with her children, not in sorrowful search, but in eternal love. The desert wind still howled, but tonight, it sounded a little less mournful, a little more like a song of hope. The song of a woman finally beginning to heal. Time for the next story. Guys, if you liked that last story, please don't forget to leave a like. Thank you. The wind howled a mournful song through the canyons of the Navajo Nation, a song Maya knew well. It was a song of loneliness, of secrets whispered in the dark, and tonight, it felt laced with a more sinister note, a note of fear. Maya huddled closer to the fire, the cedar smoke stinging her eyes but offering a small comfort against the encroaching chill. Her grandmother, Elsie, sat across from her, face etched with the deep lines of wisdom and worry. The sheep are restless tonight, Elsie said, her voice raspy from years lived under the harsh desert sun. More restless than usual. Maya knew what that meant. Restless sheep weren't just skittish animals, they were sensing something unnatural. Something, Skinwalker. Maya didn't believe in fairy tales. She was a modern Navajo woman, studying pre-med at the university in Flagstaff. But she couldn't deny the stories her grandmother told, the stories that ran deeper than blood, stories intertwined with the very earth she walked on. And she couldn't deny the gnawing unease in her gut, the feeling of being watched, the feeling that something ancient and malevolent was lurking just beyond the firelight. "Grandma," Maya said, trying to sound braver than she felt, "you don't really think?" Elsie sighed, reaching for her gnarled walking stick. "The old ways are still strong, Maya. Some things are best left undisturbed. But some people, consumed by greed or power, seek them out." The wind picked up, rattling the canvas of their hogan. A dog barked in the distance, a frantic, terrified bark that quickly choked into silence. The fire sputtered, throwing long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and twist like living things. "We need to be careful," Elsie continued, her eyes glittering in the firelight. "Skinwalkers, they can mimic anything. Animals, voices, even people you know." Days turned into nights filled with dread. Maya helped Elsie gather wood, tend the sheep, and maintain a constant vigil. The uneasy feeling never left, and the signs became more frequent. Mutilated carcasses of animals, strange tracks near their hogan that resembled no known creature, and whispers on the wind that sounded eerily like Maya's deceased grandfather calling her name. One evening, while tending the sheep, Maya heard a familiar voice. "Maya? Is that you?" Her heart leaped. It was her cousin, David, home from his job in Farmington. Relief washed over her, but a sliver of doubt lingered. Something felt off. David never visited without calling first, and he looked too tired, his eyes too hollow. "David? What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. He smiled, a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just came to see how you and Grandma were doing. Been worried about you both." He started walking towards her, and that's when she saw it. A flicker, a momentary distortion in his face, a glimpse of something feral and inhuman. He was standing on hallowed ground her grandmother had blessed with corn pollen earlier that morning. The sacred powder was clinging to his boots, illuminating a patch of coarse, greasy fur that was clearly not human skin. Fear jolted through Maya, sharper than any pain. She knew with chilling certainty that this wasn't David. This was something else, something ancient and evil wearing his face. "Get away!" she screamed, grabbing a handful of dirt and flinging it at him. The creature hissed, its face contorting in rage. The illusion faltered, revealing glimpses of a gaunt, emaciated figure with burning red eyes. It lunged at her, claws extended. Maya screamed again and ran, her lungs burning, her heart pounding. She knew the land, every rock, every crevice. She ran towards the canyon, towards the sacred places where the Skinwalker wouldn't dare follow. She reached a narrow passage, the wind screaming through the rocks like a banshee. She could hear the creature behind her, its footsteps heavy and unnatural. As she squeezed through the passage, she remembered Elsie's teachings, the old way of protection. She grabbed a handful of juniper berries from a nearby bush and crushed them in her palm, releasing their pungent aroma into the air. The creature stopped at the entrance to the passage, its form flickering, trying to maintain the illusion of David. The juniper, sacred to the Navajo, repelled it. "You can't hide, Maya," it hissed, its voice a distorted echo of David's. "I will find you. We will all find you." Maya didn't wait. She ran, pushing herself harder than she ever had before. She reached a hidden cave, a place she and her grandfather had discovered years ago, a place where she felt safe. She huddled in the darkness, the scent of the juniper berries clinging to her skin, a shield against the encroaching darkness. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Maya emerged from the cave, exhausted but alive. She knew this wasn't over. The Skinwalker was still out there hunting. But she was no longer just Maya, the pre-med student. She was Maya, granddaughter of Elsie, a keeper of the old ways. She knew the land, she knew the stories, and she knew the power that resided within her. She had faced the darkness and survived. She walked back towards her hogan, towards her grandmother, towards the fire that still flickered, a beacon of hope in the face of unimaginable evil. The wind still howled, but tonight Maya heard a different song. It was a song of resilience, of courage, and of the enduring strength of the Navajo people. The Skinwalker may have taken David's form, but it wouldn't take their spirit. And Maya would be ready, armed with the knowledge of her ancestors, to protect her family and her land from the darkness that stalked the night. The fight had just begun. Time for the next story. Guys, if you liked that last story, please don't forget to leave a like. Thank you. The rusted swing set groaned under the weight of the wind, a lonely counterpoint to the chirping crickets. Sarah shivered, pulling her threadbare hoodie tighter. Even in late August, the Colchester overpass held a chill, a cold seep that seemed to emanate from the concrete itself. She and her boyfriend Mark were here as a dare. Urban legend, they called it. The Bunny Man. A spectral figure, they said, roaming the underpass with an axe, preying on foolish teenagers brave enough to trespass after dark. Seriously, Sarah, Mark said, adjusting his phone's flashlight. You really believe this crap? An escaped mental patient dressed in a bunny suit, hacking people with an axe? Sounds like something out of a bad B-movie. Sarah bit her lip. She didn't believe it, not really. But the story, repeated countless times in hushed tones in their high school hallways, had burrowed under her skin. The conflicting accounts, the grainy photos supposedly showing a shadowy figure near the underpass, they all created a prickling unease she couldn't shake. I just think we should be careful, she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Mark scoffed. Careful of what? Squirrels? This is a total waste of time. Let's just take a selfie and get out of here. He snapped a picture, the flash briefly illuminating the graffiti-covered concrete walls. Names, dates, haphazard declarations of love, and she noticed with a shiver several crude drawings of rabbits, some with menacing red eyes. As Mark scrolled through the picture, a twig snapped nearby. Both of them jumped. Just a deer, Mark said, trying to sound nonchalant. He shined the flashlight into the woods. Nothing. They continued walking, the silence broken only by the crunch of gravel under their feet and Sarah's increasingly rapid heartbeat. The air grew thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something acrid and metallic. Suddenly, a low, guttural growl echoed from the darkness under the bridge. It wasn't the sound of any animal Sarah had ever heard. Mark froze, his bravado momentarily forgotten. He slowly turned the flashlight towards the sound. The beam danced erratically, catching on shadows that seemed to writhe and twist. Then they saw it. Standing in the dim light filtering from the road above, was a figure. Tall and gaunt, clad in tattered, once white fur that clung to its emaciated frame. On its head was a grotesque, misshapen bunny mask, the eye sockets gaping like empty wounds. In its hand, glinting menacingly, was an axe. Sarah screamed, a primal sound ripped from her throat. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. It simply stood there, its head cocked, its presence radiating an aura of pure, unadulterated malice. Mark, paralyzed by terror, could only manage a strangled gasp. The flashlight slipped from his trembling hand, plunging them into near darkness. Sarah grabbed his arm and yanked him forward. They stumbled back the way they came, their feet pounding on the gravel. The growl echoed behind them, closer now, punctuated by the rhythmic thud of something heavy hitting the ground. They didn't look back. They ran, fueled by adrenaline and fear, their lungs burning, their legs screaming in protest. They didn't stop running until they reached Mark's car, their hands fumbling with the keys in the lock. As they sped away, careening down the deserted road, Sarah glanced back at the underpass. The figure was still there, standing in the shadows, watching them. The axe gleamed in the moonlight. Back home, huddled in her bed, Sarah couldn't shake the image of the bunny man. Mark tried to dismiss it as a prankster, a disturbed homeless person with a rabbit obsession. But Sarah knew deep down that what they had seen that night was something far more sinister, something that defied explanation. The Colchester overpass, she realized, wasn't just a place of urban legend. It was a place where the shadows held secrets, where the past refused to stay buried, and where the bunny man still roamed, searching for his next victim. She would never go back. And every time she heard a twig snap in the night, she would remember the guttural growl, the gleaming axe, and the terrifying emptiness behind the bunny mask. The bunny man wasn't just a story. He was real. And he was waiting. Time for the next story. Guys, if you liked that last story, please don't forget to leave a like. Thank you. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing through the skeletal branches of the pine trees. A fine, biting snow stung Llrona's face as she trudged deeper into the forest, her breaths clouding in the frigid air. Hunger gnawed at her belly, a constant, gnawing ache that mirrored the desolation in her heart. The winter had been unforgiving. The deer had vanished, the rabbits had burrowed deep, and the river, once teeming with fish, was now a solid, unforgiving sheet of ice. The village was starving. Llrona, a young woman hardened by hardship, had volunteered to venture further than anyone else, hoping to find some form of sustenance. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of searching, shivering, and despair. She found nothing, only the whispering wind and the oppressive silence broken by the occasional snap of a branch. The forest, once a familiar comfort, now felt alien, menacing. One evening, huddled under the meager shelter of a fallen log, exhaustion claimed her. She dreamt of warmth, of steaming stews and laughing children. But the dream quickly twisted. The fire turned to ice, the stew became ash, and the children's laughter morphed into a chilling, guttural rasp. She woke with a jolt, the sound still echoing in her ears. As she sat up, she caught a whiff of something different. Something acrid, metallic, and sickeningly sweet. Driven by a desperate hope, she followed the scent. It led her deeper into the woods, to a clearing bathed in an unnatural, pale light. In the center of the clearing, something stood. It was tall, impossibly so, its gaunt, skeletal frame draped in tattered furs. Its head was that of a deer, but warped and grotesque, the antlers splintered and stained a disturbing crimson. Its eyes, burning with an unholy light, fixed on her. Fear, primal and overwhelming, paralyzed Llrona. She knew, with a bone-chilling certainty, that what stood before her was not of this world. It was the Wendigo, the creature of legend, the embodiment of starvation and primal hunger. The Wendigo emitted a low, rasping growl that resonated deep within Llrona's chest. It took a step forward, its long, spindly fingers twitching. Llrona finally found her voice, a choked whisper swallowed by the wind. "Be begone," she stammered, her hand instinctively reaching for the small knife she carried. The Wendigo tilted its head as if considering her plea. Then, it let out a horrifying shriek that tore through the silence, turning the blood in Llrona's veins to ice. The smell of decay and raw meat intensified, overwhelming her senses. Suddenly, Llrona saw it. Lying at the Wendigo's feet, partially hidden by the snow, were bones. Human bones. The stark, bleached white against the pristine snow spoke a silent, horrifying story. The Wendigo was watching her, its eyes gleamed with a malicious hunger. It knew she understood. It knew she saw what it was. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, Llrona lunged forward, brandishing her knife. It was a foolish act, a desperate gambit against an ancient evil. The Wendigo, with its inhuman speed, easily sidestepped her attack. It reached out a long, bony hand and grasped her wrist, its grip like an iron vice. Llrona screamed, a sound that was quickly cut short as the Wendigo hoisted her into the air. She struggled, kicking and clawing, but her efforts were futile. She looked into the burning eyes of the Wendigo and saw only endless hunger. Then she saw something else. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of something human. A brief flash of pain, of regret, deep within the monstrous visage. It was gone in an instant, replaced by the insatiable hunger that consumed it. As the Wendigo opened its maw, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, Llrona closed her eyes. She knew her fate. She knew she wouldn't return to her village. But in her final moments, she clung to a single, desperate hope. Perhaps, by sacrificing herself, she could appease the insatiable hunger of the Wendigo and spare her village from its wrath. The biting wind howled on, carrying with it the chilling sound of bone cracking in the desolate, snow-covered forest. The Wendigo, sated for now, disappeared into the shadows, leaving behind only the wind, the snow, and the scattered remains of a desperate act of sacrifice. The legend lived on, a terrifying reminder of the darkness that lurks within the heart of the wilderness, and the monstrous hunger that can consume us all.
Ready for spine-chilling tales that will haunt your thoughts? Subscribe to Forgotten Storyteller for eerie narrations, unsettling mysteries, and haunting stories you won't forget. Hit the bell icon so you never miss a story, because some stories refuse to stay buried. Join us, if you dare.